I'm Maryn.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion. Okay, well, really random fact about my life.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So I got glasses for the first time yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're not just a style choice.
They're not, no.
Okay.
They're my real glasses. And when I put them on for the first time, I was like, my vision's not that bad, I don't think. Like, I don't know if I'll really notice that much of a difference. So more so, instead of being curious about what I could see when I had them on, I was more curious about, like, do I like how I look with glasses on? I don't know. So I was looking in the mirror when I first put them on. So I go, and Grandma's just down the hall, and I go, and I put them on, and I go, and she said, "What?" I was like, "I have such large pores." I didn't know. I thought I was like, if I take them off, I'm like, it's like a filter over my forehead. And I put them on, and I'm like, does everybody see this? I actually took them off, back on. Oh, yep, those are big. So
well, I think you have beautiful skin. So,
thanks.
But I'm not wearing my glasses. So I've got my filter on right now as I'm looking.
Well, then I told Bruno that on the phone as he was driving home from work. He was like, "Now I'm afraid for you to look at me." So
that's funny. Okay, so we are back for the final, or the second to last.
Well, I think it can be the last as long as we wrap up your part of it in decent time.
I know. Well, I know that you can do a good job being timely. I'm not sure I can do a good job being timely.
I don't know.
But whatever, we're going to just do our best. And we only have the final witness, the lead detective, and then the closing arguments. So, okay, so Detective O'Driscoll, he came into the case when Detective Woody took that canine position.
The one lead detective left to go be with dogs. This other lead detective that took over threatened dogs, so...
True. The defense is really glad that you remembered that point.
Right. Well, I remember because it stuck out to us as the reason they wanted that talked about.
Yeah, I was surprised at how soon after he became the lead detective that Kouri was arrested. And I don't know if that would have happened anyway, or it was just a difference in his approach, or I don't know. But he came in March of 2023, and Kouri was arrested in May of 2023.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Timing-wise, it's, like you said, hard to say if it's causation or correlation. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was a narcotics investigator prior to becoming a major crime detective. I do think that maybe that's part of why the case progressed, because Carmen was the key part of the case when they submitted the information to the county attorney's office. He says that he did not know much about the case at all when he took over, and he decided not to look too much into what had already been done and just try and look at it through fresh eyes. He came in thinking there are 3 likely scenarios. Man, the rain is coming down.
It's okay. We can have stormy ambiance.
Yeah, that's actually appropriate for a closing episode.
Yeah, enjoy it.
So he came in thinking there are 3 likely scenarios. 1, accidental overdose, 2, suicide, or 3, someone else administered a large amount of fentanyl orally in order to kill him.
Gotcha. He included that third that the PI chose not to mention.
Right.
The intentional overdose.
Right. Yep.
Self-inflicted.
And I think the reason he probably did that is I don't know. I mean, I think it's not a good thing to go in right from the start, ruling out the possibility of suicide, because, I mean, I think...
Holy wow.
It's picking it up on the recording, that's for sure. Because I think with investigation, investigators found that he did have plans for the immediate future, for the more distant future. So there really were no indicators that this was an intentional suicide.
Yeah. I mean, there was no note.
Right.
But yeah, I think that you're right also. Like, he shouldn't have totally ruled that out because it is a possibility.
First thing he pulled up Eric's Doppel record, which is the controlled substances history, to see if he had any prescriptions for controlled substances. And he did not for the year leading up to his death. He searched from March 1st of 2021 to March 31st of 2022. So a little bit over a year. The only other thing that he found referencing drugs at all on Eric's phone was conversation between him and Kouri, where on a few occasions talked about THC gummies, where they're talking about going to a movie together, and it was actually Kouri that suggested eat a gummy, like when they go into this movie, to take a gummy at the Nice Theater. So she asks that question, and he talks about at least one of the boys going with grandparents to a rodeo or something, and he's talking about other stuff and the plans there, and she brings it up again, saying, so sweats, hoodies, gummy, James Bond movie at the Nice Theater, since he didn't respond to that earlier and went on with something else. And he responds, I'd like to get some grub first if gummies are in the forecast. Later, she makes comments about, I never did any of it. He was always the one, and only if he twisted my arm. Here we see she's bringing it up herself, and when he doesn't respond, she brings it up again to see, hey, what do you think about this plan?
He said, I couldn't eat unless I had a gummy.
Oh, wait, no. And then there is a text exchange on January 13th, so this would have been like a month and a half before he died, where Eric asked Kouri, the boys are wondering when you're coming home. And she says, no, you are you, and you are wondering, not them. I'll call you on my way.
Oh.
And his response is, no, I'd never go hang out with girls and miss the boys' games and scouts. Sorry, but that's not something I would ever think about doing. So clearly...
That was a response to what she said? Or is that just a different text?
No, I mean, this is in the text thread, but I don't know if there was something said before that. What I read into that is she's off doing some fun thing that she wants to do. Well, and I think there's kind of like, oh, no, you're the one that's wondering. He's like, no, the boys actually are wondering because I don't miss their games, so they're wondering where you are. So...
well, it's more so the part about girls that was weird to me. Like that he says, I wouldn't be off with girls or something like that. Like, is he saying she's hanging out with boys or with girls? Also, like,
that's a good point. Is he saying she's hanging out with girls, or is he saying it would be like me going to hang out with girls and miss the game, and you're going and hanging out with boys?
Right.
Maybe?
Well, him hanging out with girls would be a lot different than him hanging out with the boys, which would be the equivalent of her hanging out with the girls.
Right.
But him hanging out with the girls would be more the equivalent of her hanging out with boys.
True.
So,
yeah.
But I don't know. That's a lot of reading into.
Yeah.
But it's a weird thing for him to say.
Yeah, for sure. So then they go into Kouri's interview on Good Things Utah. And for some reason, the defense does not want this brought into trial. I'm not quite sure why, because they don't actually play the interview. They show a picture of Kouri sitting on the couch with the two hosts that are interviewing her, and they show this email chain, which the defense also tries to get excluded, which is just her applying to be on the show.
Gotcha. So all that tells us is that they didn't reach out to her. She wanted to go on and talk about her book, which, okay, I mean, you know, you could say an author would love to go and talk about their book.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think it's all that weird. I mean, I do think they're is a different implication. If they hear about the book, it gains popularity. And so they say, hey, would you come on and talk about this? Versus her saying, hey, I wrote this book. In her contact form, she says, I've just written what appears to be the first children's book about losing a parent. My husband passed away last year and we have 3 young boys. I wrote this book to help kids find comfort and peace when losing a parent or anyone close to them. I hope to promote it on your show to help parents comfort their children with such a tragic life event.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they ask her, like, yeah, that would be great. Could you also share 3 steps on helping kids to cope with the loss of a parent? And so she does say, yeah, I can do that. And then she also did an interview on a radio station on April 12th of 2023. And the defense objects this time in part for authenticity. I'm like, authenticity? What are you talking about? Are you claiming that this wasn't her on the interview? Or what? And I don't know if they submit the interview to the jury to listen to or not. They have this just like a screenshot of where you can click on the link to listen to the episode. And it just says Summit County Mom pens new book after unexpected death of husband. And then they go to the book itself where the Detective O'Driscoll says that he received a package, and in the package was a copy of Kouri's book. And from Amazon, when you order, if you're sending it to someone else, you can put a little gift message, and they insert that inside the front cover. The message said, there are 2 sides to every story. This is the true Kouri, a devoted wife and adoring mother, thought you should know, from Anonymous. And so he's immediately like, okay, who sent this?
Right.
So he looks into it, and it was from Kouri's mom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are 2 sides to your child. Like,
right.
The part that some parents want to believe, like, their kids can never do wrong, and the reality that sometimes they do.
Right.
Not that they're all bad or all wrong, you know, but...
I mean, I think it's interesting that she chose to send it anonymous, because that just tells you she knew that, oh, well, coming from her mom, it wouldn't be all that significant.
Right.
Because, of course, every parent, not every parent, but most parents are going to take that stance, right?
Yeah.
But if it came from some random person in the public, that it would be more meaningful, where they're saying, look, this is who I see her as. You guys are looking at the wrong person, you know. But then it's really interesting that there's this whole string of emails, which defense also doesn't want to be let in, where Kouri is back and forth with a ghostwriter, a book writer, where she's submitting information and ideas, and they write the book for her, but it has her name on it as the author. And of course, she represents herself in the Good Things Utah as the author of this book, which I know that authors sometimes do use ghostwriters, and they don't have to. I mean, the ghostwriter is a ghost. Their name is not written on there as being the author.
Right, and people do this knowing that they're not going to have their name on it. It's not like stolen work or some, you know.
Right, yeah.
It's an agreement that they have, and they get, I'm sure, money.
Right, they get paid and all of that. But it was interesting because there is, you know, just this idea of, oh, she wrote this children's book. And it's like, oh, she didn't write this children's book. She published a children's book. I think that's more accurate to say she published a children's book, not really she authored a children's book, right? And I mean, like, a children's book, that's a pretty simple book, usually. You would think an adult could probably write a children's book without a ghostwriter.
Yeah, I don't know what I feel about AI sometimes, especially like generative AI. Some things I'm like, you couldn't do that yourself. Like you couldn't think about your own life and your own experience and your own, what your children might think, or heck, I could think of what a child might say and write a book about this. Yeah. And no offense to the ghostwriter, but I read the book and
maybe she did write it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
They're like, this is a bad idea. And she's like, no, this is how I want it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what all came of that, but we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah. I didn't read the book because they probably did submit it to the jury, so I probably could have read it, but I wanted to look and see if on the inside anywhere, if it credited the company that assisted with the writing or whatever, which I understand is kind of customary that you kind of a nod to, but it's not under author.
Right.
Anyway, but there's some back and forth with her half-brother, DJ, and her mom about it, where she's talking about when it's going live on Amazon, and she's already planning on writing her own book, like a book about her story, apparently.
Right, like a memoir, autobiography.
Yeah, so she says, I just wanted to understand the book process, so I'm ready to go for my own book. I've already talked to a writer for my book. And
I do kind of see what the defense would be saying of like, what is the purpose of bringing in all of the stuff about the book, besides if people think that she did it, then it makes her look even worse.
Right. Yeah. I do think partly they're showing her ambition. I'm not sure if it should have been brought in
right
or not, and I don't know that it actually has any bearing for me on guilt or innocence. It's more interesting than anything.
For sure. But I do think that it can look kind of like a smear campaign, and I think you could maybe argue that there's some angle of like she would get financial benefit out of his death that you could maybe rope in there, but even if she's guilty, I don't think she thought that far ahead as far as like, I don't think that she was like, I'm going to kill him and I'm going to write a book about it and I'm going to make lots of money. Like, it's just maybe finding other opportunities that it came to her mind later. But yeah, it is kind of strange that they do allow all of this in. It doesn't have much of a point as far as evidence, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I don't know, they were talking about something about having to use alternate names. I guess protection reasons, that she could be sued for slander or I don't know, some things. But she was saying, that they would have to change names. And they were throwing around like using Carter Kouri as one of the names or something, but Carter is her son, and of course Kouri, her name, and they were just saying, the family, they would be so mad, they would freak out if you did that, that would be so funny, kind of thing, which a little bit of, I don't know, just insensitivity or just not seeming, I don't know, it's just, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But, Carter Kouri, that's what he said.
It's kind of like Connor Christie.
Yes. That's my son. Go check out his music. Connor Christie.
On Spotify, Apple Music, all those places.
Yep. Yeah, her comment to him was, OMG, they would die. It would be so funny.
Yeah. It's poor taste, for sure.
Yeah, it is poor taste. She says that on Amazon, she makes $5.35 a book. But she's working on selling them through a website where she would make $10 a book. And her goal was to sell 100,000 books by the end of the year. Like, I don't know, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of books sold.
That is a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to just switch gears there from that oddity that is Kouri's children's book.
Right.
And get back to the investigation, which primarily Carmen Lauber. So when Detective O'Driscoll came in, he's looking at the call detail records. And I did want to point out the fact that Josh Grossman is not in there, like the contact weight. We had her mom is the greatest weight, and then Eric, and then Carmen just below Eric. And I was like, man, Josh isn't even in that lineup. And then I remembered, because all the communication with Josh was in that voice over IP. So it didn't show up on the call detail record. So they couldn't see any of the communication that they had with each other.
Yep.
So it wasn't just because it was deleted, because they did see the chunks of deletions between Kouri and Carmen, and which did not look good. And I guess O'Driscoll's partner had some involvement with Carmen in the past when it came to drugs. So I think he might have been more in the narcotic side of things. And they learn that she is close with Nick Von Savage.
And Nick is Carmen's friend that drove her down at least once.
Yeah. So they start looking into him, and they see that Nick is doing a lot of communicating with Gunnison State Prison, which is a prison in central Utah. And so they request the recordings of those phone conversations from prison.
Oh.
So the inmate says, either you buy it, an Xbox controller, or have Carmen buy it and I'll pay you back. And Nick says he can't have Carmen buy it because he just talked to her and she reported she just made a bunch of money selling illicit street drugs. That phone call took place on March 4th, the day that Eric died.
Oh.
So he'd had a conversation with her pretty close to that date of March 4th and had reported that she'd made a bunch of money. So they went through Carmen's trash and they found drug paraphernalia, specifically tinfoil with burn marks on it and residue. And they got a search warrant, searched her home and her vehicle and her person. So then they took her cell phone and they were able to get whatever limited information there was that was on her cell phone. They found in her room drug paraphernalia, THC, and a gun under the bed. They also found like some vision board, collage, whatever, that Detective O'Driscoll said that's pretty consistent with working a 12-step program, that they kind of have you reminders of what you're working towards and what matters to you. And right in the center of that collage was a picture or a cutout of Eric's obituary.
Oh.
So they were, just noting that there it was.
Well, whether or not she actually played a part in his death, it's clear that she was afraid that she had.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for his obituary to be like his death rather, to be a big turning point for her, and for his obituary to be a central part of her vision board, inspiration to be clean and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what they thought too, is like, well, I mean, she seems like she at least cared about Eric, and she might feel bad for whatever part she may have had in his death. And she also had violated some terms of drug court and things like that, and having the gun that they found. And plus she had drug paraphernalia in her room and all of that. So not good for her. And she had in the past given information as a way to get a better deal for herself. So they kind of knew that she was willing to talk if it helped her out. And she also, like we said, seemed to care about Eric. So they thought the combination of those two things, maybe she would be willing to talk to them. They reviewed some of the statements that the defense had brought into court when they interviewed Carmen, like the get out of jail free card, the give me a blueprint or write it down and I'll just sign it. And the goal is getting Kouri convicted of murder, and had him talk about what those were. And they actually showed longer clips of the interview so that you could get the context of what was being said. And it's not as nefarious as it sounds when you hear just the statement. I mean, they told her when she said, why don't you write it down? They said, no, that's not the way it works. You've got to write it yourself. But they were worried about, she was worried about people seeing her writing stuff down, because snitch and all of that, not really good when you're on the inside.
Yeah.
But when they were talking about the goal is getting Kouri convicted of murder, it was more in the context of these are the steps that are going to happen. The grand jury, we need real details. And they had stressed, we don't want you making anything up. We want you to only tell what you remember, but you need a level of detail that you can take that to a jury. It can't be some vague statements. The goal is we got to have enough information to be able to take to trial, right? Yeah. So, and ultimately, if Kouri did this as they believed she did based on the evidence they already had, and they needed Carmen to corroborate those things that they had already found, then she needed to be able to give as much detail as she could remember.
Yeah, and I think just having that as a goal isn't necessarily a bad thing if there's no corruption involved.
Right, manufacturing of evidence.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
If you're just like, well, we want you to be able to present the evidence in the clearest way possible, because if you do a bad job with this, then even though you have good evidence, it might not be impactful.
Right. And he did say, like, the earlier interviews, she was really trying to downplay her involvement, which he, having experience in narcotics, he said, this is what we see, is they'll hedge, and downplay and only give you as much as they feel like they have to based on what you can show them they know.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it is kind of a process of working with them. Hey, showing them, look, we know stuff, right? Here's stuff that we know. And then they will start being more and more truthful as time goes on.
Right.
She did, I don't know, her, like, listening to her on the interviews and stuff, she did really come across as, I don't know, not super convincing, or I did feel that whole, like, trying to get out of it type of feeling. Someone that's a little bit squirrely. There was that sense. I didn't feel that way when
she testified.
She testified, yeah. And I can see that, okay, she was definitely using around that time. There is just a difference in how she's acting. Not necessarily that she was high or something during these interviews, and maybe she could have been for the very first one, because she'd just been arrested that day, but she definitely sounded different in court than she did on the videos to me.
Okay.
When they arrested Kouri on May 8th, they did a search that day as well, and they found a notebook in Kouri's bedroom where she had written out basically kind of like a diary of events of the days surrounding Eric's death. March 3rd, likely the day of his death, and March 4th, what had happened in the morning. And the biggest thing that they, I think, are using this to show is there are some inconsistencies in the stories that she gives over time. The timing, like one time they had drinks and in their bedroom, that she brings the drinks to their room, and then the timing when they brushed teeth and they were in bed. In this, she's talking about how they went out to the kitchen and they made the drinks out there. But one of the key things that I felt like was really important was about these conversations he was having with people in Mexico. So I guess he had gone on a hunting trip to Mexico not too long before this, and he had these horns that he's trying to get shipped back to the U.S. And he was really mad about the whole situation, according to her. Later on, though, the defense is wanting to suggest that the reason Eric was on the phone was about drugs. But Kouri herself has said in this diary entry that she's writing about what she recalls of the day is that he was specifically upset about trying to get these horns back from Mexico to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird to make that type of a change. Maybe he wanted the horns packed with drugs.
Yeah, I'm like, is it code?
That was going to be the problem.
Yeah.
To the point that she was even saying that Eric was so mad that he, like, threw his phone across the room and stuff. And also kind of what time they had the drinks, what time she went into her son's room. In this description, she says that she went into his room more like around 9:30 or something, because 9:15, he's screaming mad at these guys and he threw his phone. And then, let's go have a celebration drink. They go into the kitchen and they make this drink, and then they go in, they brush their teeth and get into bed, and then they hear their son upset and she leaves. But she tells Chelsea that she left to go to her son's room while Eric was on the phone with the guy in Mexico. And we know the phone call that took place happened at 8:50. So the timeline doesn't really match up. Also, when she talked to Eric's friend Bryce, she said he was sleeping in the same position as he was when I left. But she says he was still awake when she left the room. So there are some kind of weird things that don't actually match very well.
Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, she talks about the CPR thing and her getting him down on the ground and starting CPR until the EMTs arrive. And then they say when they started the compressions, that's when the bloody fluid started coming out, and she was freaking out. They tell her she needs to leave. She goes out, and then she also claims that when they came and told her that he had died, that she ran to the bathroom and started throwing up.
Okay.
And they enter some text between Kouri and Eric about the Midway Mansion, where she wants some estimates on like what it would cost to have the electric, plumbing, flooring, like basically to get it finished pretty much, at least sellable type finished. And he's like, I don't know, it's gonna be a lot. He does describe the condition of the house. He says to fix all the rotted plywood and everything else. So there's a lot of problems that are not just, well, there might be problems. He's saying there's problems here. It's going to take all of this stuff. So he was guessing somewhere around 4 million or something. No, 6 million. Whoa. 6 million. And she's like, okay, cool, done. And then he even says, oh, wait, and add on another 250,000 for the driveway and the landscape. And she's like, oh, well, that's still not bad. All in 7.35. And then sell for 14 million to be safe. And he's like, yeah, well, yeah, but I'm sure I'm low on a bunch of my estimates. And remember, we don't have time to do this project. And she's like, yeah, I know, we're not, but he just likes to have an idea or whatever. The state is a bit like she's pressing and he's kind of pulling her back a little bit, that maybe he wasn't so enthusiastic about the project, not as enthusiastic as she's representing it to be, that he had some concerns there. Then there are some more text and phone conversations. So her brother had asked Kouri if Eric ever talked about suicide. And she said, well, not suicide specifically, but he would always say things like, if anything ever happened to me, you guys will be set for life. Okay. It just was giving her ideas. Like when he would go hunting or snowmobiling, that kind of thing. So I feel like some of this is kind of about crafting the story, and her conversation with her mom it's one of the jail calls, and they have a transcript of that, and you listen to her talking to her mom on the phone. They're talking about stuff that's out in the media, and them saying that she had put a love note in with the sandwich, the poison sandwich thing, and no, I didn't do that, and we ate it in the office. Well, they didn't eat it in the office because she wasn't there with him. He ate it in the office maybe, but she was not there. So there's a lot of kind of, oh, what are they talking about? No, that's not true. It was like this, but the information doesn't appear to be accurate.
Right.
But the big deal in his whole testimony, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the walk the dog letter. So even though we did not get to hear the My Princess letter / baby cakes letter,
which I could not find, I'm sorry to report.
Oh no. Boo. Is the walk the dog letter. So Kouri has written this letter to her mom on December 12th, 2023.
Did she? So I don't know that much about, like, I read the letter, but I don't know how they found it, where they found it. Was she in prison was she in jail at this point?
She was in jail.
Okay, so I think I maybe heard like they found it in her jail cell, or maybe they read her mail and got it from that. I don't know. Did they say?
I don't recall them saying exactly how they got it. They probably did say it at some point. The defense points out that this letter, let's say it was in her jail cell. Well, then even though she wrote it, her mom didn't get it because it's in her jail cell.
Right.
But that doesn't mean this is the only copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been a draft, or this could have been, I don't know. But it doesn't read very well. It does sound like she's trying to concoct a story with her brother and getting her mom's help in talking to her brother about what to say or what to do. Like, hey, so here's what I'm thinking. Let's do this. Like, talk to Ronnie, who's her brother, and he's probably going to have to testify to this, but it is super short, not a lot to it. He'll need to tell Skye at the meeting next week, which was her attorney at the time. Mm-hmm. And this whole idea of, okay, now so a year or so before Eric's death, Ronnie was watching football with Eric, and Eric starts talking about his Mexico trips, and Eric told Ronnie that he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico, and, not to tell Kouri because she'll get upset about it, because I always said that he just gets high every night and won't help take care of the kids. And I have pictures on my phone of Eric passed out on the floor and in the chair. And then, okay, Ronnie should have some texts about them talking about drugs or getting high, which I kind of think Ronnie was a source for their THC gummies.
That could be, well, when I read that, I was like, are they going to try to somehow, like, make fake texts, like, concoct this conversation out of thin air and say, look, here are the receipts? Like,
Right. Yeah, because there is a text message where Kouri says Ronnie thinks the gummies were laced because it was a new pack. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, why would Ronnie know anything about the packs and the new thing that he's getting? So I kind of think Ronnie was the source of the drugs. Okay. So there could be communication about him trying to arrange to get gummies from him. Yeah. So, I don't know. But obviously, people knew that he used THC gummies.
I think if those messages existed, they probably would be
entered.
Yes, I think they would be entered, because part of the whole thing is, like, does he have a drug habit? And if he does have a drug habit, then it could have been accidental, or, you know.
Right. Yeah, I feel like she's hitting on ways to explain away the situation and distance herself from it. Why is it that they never found any fentanyl in the house? Well, Eric told Ronnie that he keeps them in an allergy pill bottle in his work truck, so I wouldn't find them. Which is weird, because it's like, well, but you're also saying that he wanted you to get Carmen to buy him drugs. Why would he have to hide drugs that you're asking her to get for you? Why are you trying to say, like, so, okay, in the past he was trying to hide it from you, but now in the present, and he's still hiding the pills, and he's hiding them in his truck so that Kouri won't find him and then find them, and then, right, and like, oh, well, and then Cody or the sisters or other people, they cleaned out the truck and they got rid of that stuff before the authorities could search it, so that's why they never found anything. Well, would he take those and then go put them back in the truck? Or you're also saying, oh, he had them in that hydrocodone bottle. That's not allergy pill bottles. That's a hydrocodone bottle. I don't know. It's just a little bit, doesn't really come together all that well. And, oh, well, he was always trying to set Kouri up to be the one to take the fall. And use the THC gummy Hawaii thing of putting them in her suitcase, and he thought it was funny, and she would be mad. But she also says, reword this however he needs to, but make sure that you include all of these details that I'm saying here. And the connection has to be made with Mexico and drugs. it can be short and to the point, but has to be done. And then she does say, upon information and belief, LOL. I'm like, what is that? I mean, yeah. I mean, there must be something, because she starts the whole paragraph of what she's saying is upon information and belief, and then in parentheses, just like they say. So there must be legal terminology that they use, and like, okay, upon information and belief, here's the story. And she says that again, upon information and belief, LOL.
Right.
And then also tell Ronnie not to overanalyze it. It was a quick 2-minute conversation, LOL. Tell him I need him to do this. Bring me home, and then we will get those damn bitches, meaning Eric's sisters.
Okay, so in legal contexts, upon information and belief means a statement is based on secondhand information or reasonable inference rather than firsthand knowledge. So maybe like because it's secondhand information for her to know these things.
Maybe.
Because she shouldn't know it, Ronnie would know it, or if she knew it, it was because Ronnie told her, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and then it's also like, okay, well, you know, we're so close to the end, let's push through.
So it says that the phrase protects the maker from outright claims of falsehood while still permitting them to assert necessary allegations.
So are they like, well, so I could be lying, but I'm saying, well, this is my belief, so therefore you can't get me in trouble for it?
Yeah, I don't know. Still, I mean, obviously, like, they've talked about it, and they're just referencing that because it's not like they explain it, what she means by that in there, but...
Right. Yeah. And then also have the conversation with Ronnie before he meets with Skye, and then tell him to tell Skye at the meeting about the conversation. And somewhere, I think they show it in the closing arguments, but she makes a comment that he's supposed to tell the attorney that Kouri didn't know about the conversation.
Right. Okay.
So that's all for the state questioning the lead detective.
I wonder why it's called Walk the Dog.
Because she says at the very top, walk the dog, but take notes or make vague notes so you can remember, or something like this, titled that herself. She suspects they're tapping their phones or have listening devices or something. And so to go out, walk the dog, go through this information, take some vague notes so you remember the things that I'm telling you. And...
right. I think it says somewhere in there so that she thinks that the house, that they might be listening to their phone calls or things like that.
Yep, exactly.
I wondered, like, when I heard the walk the dog letter, I was like, well, because there was a whole thing about how she lets the dog out, and that's the whole movement. I wondered if it had connection to that. Not at all.
Nope. It's got to be her mom going to walk their dog. Do this away from the house, away from prying eyes and ears. But then, like, eat this message, burn after reading.
Right.
Or, I'm like, I don't know. But it is a little strange that this still is in existence. It does appear to me, though, that this is pretty much an outline of the defense's case. Mm-hmm. These are the things that they're saying as their defense.
Yeah, well, I mean, probably because they had to have gotten this when, like, shared discovery. I don't think Ronnie doesn't come on and testify of all of this, right? Because it's like, well, can't use that now.
No.
But the bare bones of it, they're still want to say are true.
Yeah, all the details. This is what they're saying is true. So is that because it is true? Or is that because they're like, oh, good, that covers all of the areas that we need covered? I'm not really sure, but the defense kind of brought out that the detectives were never able to confirm or deny with Ronnie if that happened. And he agrees, yeah, we weren't able to confirm or deny with Ronnie because he would never agree to be interviewed. And they're like, well, I mean, so the answer is no, you were never able to confirm or deny with Ronnie. Mm-hmm. And trying to get around the fact that, oh, yeah, it's not that we didn't try. He would not talk to us. And so we weren't able to confirm or deny. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be kind of the standard with her family, is they just all refuse to be interviewed. So then they can say, oh, well, did you ever even talk to them about this? No. oh, well, it's like, yeah, because they wouldn't talk to us. So,
Right.
The defense brings up that some aspects of this letter have been confirmed during trial. For example, Allie Staking, who was the friend that went to Hawaii with them and talked about the THC gummies.
She's the one who also went on the retreat, no?
Yes, in Kouri's suitcase. Ronnie's phone was never seized to get any downloads, like were there text messages that were being talked about in this walk the dog letter. And
yeah, but like if there were, then the defense would have wanted them out there. They can do it.
Right.
So.
And then also Cody took the work truck, and so he was able to clean everything out of the truck, which is exactly what Kouri said in her whole walk the dog letter. And the walk the dog note, they can't say that the mom ever got any of that information.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it does kind of seem like it, because that's what they're saying. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they bring up that the foil from Carmen's garbage was tested. The detective's like, I don't remember what came back, but the defense suggests that it tested positive for meth and heroin, but not fentanyl, which nobody ever said that Carmen was using fentanyl. In fact, She said she was afraid of it, so she didn't ever use it herself. They try and throw a little shade on him, like, hey, well, this is the first time that you'd ever used this downloading equipment. They got the ability to do the downloads in-house around this time, and so it was the first download that he had done using that equipment in their office. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't know what you're doing. I don't think it works like that. Honestly, I don't think it works like that. So maybe you didn't do a very good extraction, or
because things are missing.
Wrong. Well, I mean, I think I get the sense that their whole case is basically it's a bad investigation. So you didn't look into things that you should have, like talking to Ronnie or taking Ronnie's cell phone and doing a download of his phone. You're not practiced in using this equipment, and so you probably didn't do a good job with that. When you interviewed Chelsea Barney, you lied, or you thought that Chelsea had spoken with Kouri the night of Eric's death. And they told Chelsea, hey, we know that you were the last person to talk to Kouri. And she goes to check her records, and they're like, no, I didn't. He said that there was typically daily communication, multiple times a day, between Kouri and Chelsea. But there is a 2-day gap where there was no communication, and that was the 3rd and the 4th. Probably until she notified Chelsea, because Chelsea was over there pretty quick after Eric died. But they wondered if maybe there was a deletion of their interaction during that time because it fell out of the norm. So I mean, here's the reality. Cops can lie when they interview people. They can say things. So if I think that this data was altered. So we're going to say, we know you guys spoke. And, if it's true, then maybe they'll cave and they'll admit to it, even though you don't know for sure. You're just guessing, right? But the defense is pointing out, well, you thought that they had deleted this data, but it turns out you were wrong. You're coming to wrong, faulty conclusions. And he says, yeah, we did confirm with her cell carrier, and that gap was actually there. It just was out of the norm for them, which is why they thought maybe there was some deletion. They never found anything laced with fentanyl, no trace of fentanyl in Kouri's house. They never found cups, straws, or any dishes in their house with fentanyl residue. I don't even think they tested any of those things until a while later. I don't know if it would still be there that long after, because we talked about their first search warrant wasn't until over a month after Eric's death. So is that really just going to be sitting around with fentanyl residue on it, even if it was there? Also, hey, you got kind of buddy-buddy with Carmen. You guys talked to her a lot of times, and then didn't you give her some rides and stuff like that? And they said, well, sometimes they gave her a ride to court. But he does agree, yeah, we did have a lot of contact with Carmen up until she appeared in court. And he was not trying to hide that was true. So the gifts that we talked about on Kouri's phone, the 3 money gifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The defense shows the 4th picture that was accessed at the same exact time. And it is a distance view of the Midway mansion. So it does seem like somehow it was tied to the house. They're suggesting that it was Eric that sent that stuff to Kouri.
The gifts included?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Because there is another message that Eric sent to Kouri on the 3rd that she didn't open until the 4th at 10:42 a.m. that had a picture of kind of the corner of the Midway mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was that picture he sent to her, and he sent some other gifts, one with like popping champagne. I think it's a gift from The Notebook, and like some farmer guy doing a little happy jig, and the picture of the corner of the Midway mansion.
Okay.
All together. She also asked, well, did you try and verify stuff that was in the Walk the Dog letter? So really kind of nitpicking about the investigation and whether it was a good investigation, which I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a good investigation. Maybe there are holes. And she also asked if there were any other obituaries in Carmen's vision board that she has. And he says he doesn't remember that being the case. She zooms in, and right close to where Eric's obituary is, there's a program from a funeral service that's tacked on there too. So it's not an obituary, but it is a funeral. And it would be interesting if that person also died from drugs, and that might actually be a common theme.
Right. Maybe instead of guilt could be like, I don't want to end up like this. But
But she has to know that Eric ended up like that because of drugs.
I mean,
if that's what it's about.
Right. That's true.
Okay, so she asked him about like EpiPens and if EpiPens had been found in the house. He said there were a couple EpiPens in the fridge, but they belonged to one of the children, not to Eric. Well, because why? Eric had just used the EpiPen from the February 14th sandwich incident. So, and then they also had found a baggie full of hydrocodone pills in the mudroom of the house during one of their searches, and they tested that, and it did not contain any fentanyl. It's interesting that those are the only pills that get found, are the hydrocodone ones.
Yeah.
So,
her pill bottle, the empty one, what was it for?
So she had a pill bottle for quetiapine that had half a little pill in the bottom of it.
But wasn't there an empty pill bottle as well?
Yeah, that pill bottle that was on the bedside table was hydrocodone, and it was for him. So it matched those pills,
right.
Which there were statements like he'd been prescribed pain pills, but he didn't take them. Well, so it would actually make sense if that pill bottle got emptied out into a baggie and it's left there empty.
And they never tested it. It could have had the fentanyl in it.
Yeah.
She replaced it.
Yeah. Well, and I did find out, which I hadn't picked up on the way that the questions were asked or answered or something, that the empty pill bottle in question had been destroyed in like August of 2024 or something like that. So it had been disposed of by the medical examiner's office at some point. So nobody could test it, where I kind of had said, well, I mean, the defense could have it tested, but they don't want to. Well, they could have had it tested before that point if they had that question. But the defense attorney says, so you haven't found a murder weapon, no fentanyl found in the house. And he says there was a boatload of fentanyl in his stomach that came out of the house with him. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're right. There was fentanyl in the house for a time, and then it got removed with his body.
Yes. In fact, if there were more than that left over, would be crazy, because there was a lot.
Yeah, right.
Already there.
Yeah. And also says, well, you don't know if Eric gave Kouri permission to sign his name on that life insurance policy. And his reply is, well, it doesn't matter under the forgery statute.
Right.
It's still a forgery.
Why would he say, yeah, go ahead and sign that? He could just sign it.
Well, right. And the other thing is, well, you need a power of attorney to sign someone else's name legally, right? So even if he said, yeah, sure, go ahead and sign it for me, it's still a forgery.
Right. And isn't this the one where the address was her P.O. box and all of those things where, like, none of it was actually connected to him?
Right. Yep. But it's the defense's tactic. Well, how can you prove that he didn't say that she could sign it? And according to him...
Can you prove that he did?
Right, right. We don't have to prove that he did. We just have to, So, and that the handwriting expert had said, well, probably not Eric, but they couldn't say it was Kouri. So when the state comes back up, they bring up that there was a lot of aspects of the investigation that weren't actually done by him. He was only part of the investigation for a few months. I'm sure after she was arrested, they were probably still doing some things, but the county attorney office, they have their own investigator, which he's not associated with that. And so they don't have a digital forensics expert in their office or a forensic accounting expert. So those experts were hired by the county attorney's office, and they did the work for the county attorney. So he didn't have knowledge of those things. He didn't have access to those things. Once the sheriff's office presents them with what they have in their investigation, then they look at that and they decide whether they're going to proceed with a trial. And then they have their additional investigation that goes on with their investigators that they're continuing to gather information that's not really anything to do with the sheriff's office anymore. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of interesting to hear that. And Carmen's interviews happened before they knew anything about the accounting, before they knew anything about the digital forensics, before they knew about Josh Grossman. So a lot of these things that were being brought up included knowledge that was not known yet. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't have planted those ideas for Carmen because they didn't know them yet.
Right.
And just said, yeah, well, we can't speak with people without their consent. Kouri's family refused to consent to be interviewed, and they didn't have any probable cause to seize Ronnie's cell phone. So even though it mentions that in the walk the dog letter, they didn't have enough to get a warrant to take his phone. So if he'd offered it, mm-hmm. they could have said, hey, yeah, let's download that. But none of her family gave consent for anything. So right. Then the state rests, and I mentioned in the end of the last episode that the defense also rests, which it's interesting because they do this little, back and forth talking. The judge says, oh, who's your first witness? And, oh, hold on, let's confer. There's a lot of ways that we could go in order. And so they're talking as if they're going to call witnesses. And then they're like, the defense rests. And
we could do a lot of things. We could if we wanted to, but we're not going to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so weird.
This isn't powerful enough.
It's so weird. Almost like we're going to fake you out and make you think that we're going to call people and then we're going to go, psych!
Yeah.
No, we're not really. But I'm like, what is that actually doing? I don't know. But so with the closing arguments here, the state did a really, really good job with laying out their case. The 5 charges were aggravated murder, and the aggravating factors were that it was for money. Mm-hmm. And the second aggravator, which they just have to find it was one or the other, is that the death was by means of the administration of any substance administered in a lethal amount, dosage, or quantity. So the same as we saw with Casey Terry. Mm-hmm. And then the attempted aggravated murder with the sandwich incident, insurance fraud, and forgery. So the first insurance fraud was her
like the attempt
getting the insurance in order to commit fraud, right? And then actually making the claim was a second instance of now she's filing a claim. So that is an act of fraud. Mm. And then the actual forgery that she signed it in order to defraud, which was to get money from this insurance company, pretending to be the signature of another person. They stress that evidence consists of testimony and the exhibits presented at trial. What the lawyers say is not evidence. Her attorneys said a whole lot of stuff, but they never presented evidence to back up those claims, which they should have if they had it. They should have put it on. For example, their opening and closing arguments are not evidence. right? So you need to look at the evidence that they're presenting in their closing argument, not just be swayed by the argument itself. So only Kouri could have murdered Eric, is what they're saying, that she had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. She'd already been planning this trip with Josh, and she wasn't anticipating that Eric was going to be around anymore by that date, which was in April of 2023. We already have what they believe to be an attempt in mid-February, so that would have been plenty of time, for her to get to her vacation. Well, oopsie, it doesn't work. And they have transcripts of different testimony that was presented during trial and quotes from that. And they have the reference from where the transcript is, what time that was that it was said and who said it, so that they can go back and listen to that bit of testimony if they want to. So they bring up Becky Lloyd, who testified that Kouri said in many ways it would be better if he were dead. They look at the beneficiary change, which was made that was trying to benefit Kouri, and it was an oopsie,
right,
and backed out when she realized it was the wrong one. The two different witnesses who brought up the Michael Jackson drug, which corroborate each other, and there's no way these two are talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Kouri's text message to Josh saying, if he, meaning Eric, could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. So she's imagining this future with Eric out of it and Josh in it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's kind of starting down that road of it, Josh being the one in her life instead of Eric.
Mm-hmm.
They play some of the testimony from Robert Crozier, the drug dealer, and Carmen's testimony saying, no, I told her what Robbie had. She said, okay, go ahead and get the fentanyl. And Robert Crozier, who says, they asked, so she knew that there was fentanyl in those pills? And Robert says, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So both of those testimonies corroborate each other.
And his testimony being his interview, not his testimony on the stand, right? Because he claims that...
True. You're right.
Right, because he claims that he wasn't selling fentanyl at that time.
Right. So this was the recorded interview that they had with him back when they were corroborating her story. And so they actually play his original interviews and the things that he said. I don't think we ever talked about this, and I don't know if I just missed this testimony or what, but apparently there was a witness that talked about those M30s, which are typically Roxy or Oxy. And he says that they perfectly mirror a 30 milligram oxycodone pill. So that
we talked about that. I mean, I remember that. I don't remember who said it, but I remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember this. I'm looking at his picture and I'm like, I never saw that face. I do not recall, but he says he would not be able to distinguish one from the other if he were looking at them side by side. And there are multiple. The Emmy over the state of Utah, he talks about these counterfeit pills too, and that they look the same, though they contain something different. Of course, they show, again, pictures of all the cell phone mapping and the communication between Carmen and Kouri on those dates, and Robert's location in the valley and meeting up with Carmen. The inconsistencies in Kouri's story, the people saying, yes, this was ingested from multiple witnesses, that it had to have been illicit because of its makeup, that it couldn't have been a prescription version of it. Eric had a small amount of one of Kouri's prescriptions in his system, so maybe she stuck the pills in her pill bottle to hide them and poured it out, and she had 2 little half pills in there. Maybe one of them made it in and the other half pill didn't make it in or something. I don't know. And when she's talking to the medical examiner and he brings up that there was a small amount of quetiapine in his system, she acts like she doesn't know what that was, but it's her own prescription. So in her description of what happened that night, she says that she immediately ran and grabbed the phone and called 911 and started CPR, and they play the 911 call and show like timestamps of the 911 operator trying to get her to perform CPR and her continued deflection and delay and, oh, I just don't know. And what happened? And like, we need to get him some help now. You need to do this. And she keeps doing this. So it shows that Kouri did not start CPR until almost 5.5 minutes into the call with 911.
Yeah, I listened to the 911 call, and that was my thought as well. It's like, she's just like, oh, I really struggled to move him, like get him on the floor. Like she just couldn't do it, and just like basically said, it felt like she was saying so many times, like, oh, I can't, and
Right. Well, and she keeps saying, well, I don't know, I this and that. Like she's talking about other things, and like, I was in my son's room, and I'm this and that. And we're like, we need to get him help. Like, is he breathing? Oh, I just don't know, you know. And then
he's
also,
cold, and
yeah, he's cold and yellow, and just keep talking about things, and they're like, okay, we need to get CPR started. And you can hear on the call that it's just right after she says she gets him on the floor, and she's trying to count. The operator's like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And Kouri's like, 1, 2, like a lot slower than the operator. And she's trying to like, count out loud, go with me. And then she asks like, oh, is the front door unlocked? She says, no. And so she, again, there's where she's not performing CPR. And
well,
then
she says
someone comes in and pretty immediately. So
right, and the 911 operator wants someone else to open the door. Go get your son to open the door, or something like that. But she leaves the body. Well,
right.
She leaves
She's
Eric
like,
to open the door.
I can't let them do.
Which understandable.
Yeah,
but
there does seem to be a really long delay. I mean, you're pretty much like, you need to start CPR immediately. You know, if he had just barely died and you waited 5 minutes, that could be problematic for him. Right now, he'd been dead a lot longer than that, but you add on another 5 minutes, not doing him any favors, right?
No, and she couldn't know, or wouldn't have known, how long he'd been dead. He could have just...
She may have known.
Right, but... in the scenario, right, when she's called, she's happened upon him.
I'm curious about the 10:33 unlocking of her phone. And it makes me wonder if she had verified that he had stopped breathing, or he didn't have a pulse or something at that time, and then she goes back out. She goes out at that time, is what I kind of wonder might be possible, that she leaves so that she can come back in and find him later. I don't know. But the prosecutor also points out that Kouri refers to Eric as it, not as him. I can't move it. It's just dead weight. So the depersonalization of the body, it, instead of him. And they bring up Katie's testimony, Eric's sister, that Kouri was already talking about plans of what she was going to do with the house, with the business, when they're still there taking the body out of the house, and which just was like, well, like she already had this thought through of what was going to happen next, and she was already starting to enact that plan, which seemed kind of strange. Josh Grossman's conversation with her about Kouri asking him, have you ever killed anybody, and how did that make you feel? And then, of course, the walk the dog letter. She brings up that he was buying pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico, and that Eric finally asked Kouri if Carmen could get him some. And Kouri denies that he uses drugs at all. And the fact that she wasn't offering that information and instead was stating over and over that no, he didn't do drugs, that indicates that she was actually hampering their ability to help him by stating he didn't use drugs, because if she knew, as she's stating here, that she got the drugs for him, and they're asking her that, yes, he did, because, oh my gosh, maybe he overdosed on something. But instead, she does the opposite, and she denies that he had anything to do with drugs. She didn't know anything about drugs. She's making multiple statements over a year period of time to multiple people saying he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't do drugs. And why is she still going with this?
It also seems like from the walk the dog letter, right, where like she's now, okay, well now she maybe knows they've been talking to Carmen, and so now, well, this is the why it was actually because of him that I was talking to Carmen to get drugs. And yes, I deleted all those messages, but
he was the one.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I did it for him. You know?
Right, and it explains why there's all this contact between her and Carmen. It was for him.
Yes, right. And then there's the diary type entries from the notebook that they found in their search, where she says that as soon as she was told that he was dead, she immediately ran to the bathroom and began throwing up. Well, first of all, we see the body cam footage of her being told, and she does not get up and run to the bathroom and start throwing up. Also, the EMT who told Kouri about Eric's death, they said, oh, have you ever seen people throw up? And she says, I've only seen that once. You haven't seen anyone throwing up after hearing that news? And she says, not really, no. So,
yeah, well, what other inconsistencies? I'm thinking about her talking to Chelsea about how I tried CPR and I was yelling at him to come back and blah, blah, blah. So not the reality of her performing CPR and like all of that. You know?
Yeah. Definitely just weird inconsistencies all over the place, which she's not a very truthful person when you hear about all these things that she tells people. It's just all over the place anyway, so I don't think she's all that reliable. They show the timing of when Eric was talking to his friend Scott Wagner, which was at 8:50, and Chelsea's testimony that Kouri had said that Eric was on the phone with the people in Mexico about hunting when she went into her son's bedroom, which that would have been much earlier than the later story of being 9:15 when they go out to even make the drinks in the first place. All of the deletions that were happening and showing that Kouri was trying to thwart the investigation, getting rid of things, the searches that she did. I mean, this is a good reminder for them to just, hey, here, remember all this testimony that we saw about this? They show again, just like, here's what she's paying. There's this little flat line of almost nothing that she's paying on all of these debts that she has. And this skyrocketing, like it kind of sloping up, and then it goes way up, and then it kind of comes down a little bit, and then it jumps really far up again. And then you see, well, no one's giving her money anymore. The payday loans aren't giving her money anymore. So she has to get money from a different source. Here's the evidence that she's losing money on all of her houses, and she does her friend dirty by not recording the deed and taking her money. And this is one thing that I also hadn't mentioned, that she diverts C&E's tax money that's supposed to go to the IRS, and she puts it in her own account and she uses it. And they had shown that the day before Eric's death on March 2nd, she was on the phone with the IRS for 101 minutes or something, because tax season is approaching, right? He's getting ready. Well, there's these taxes that are actually in default because she took that money and she diverted it for her own purposes, probably thinking that she'd be able to go ahead and pay it and he would never know about it.
Right, now he's about to know.
Right, and it's like, okay, so then the very next day is when he dies. So, yeah, the pressure is definitely on. We have the closing coming up, and the state is basically, did she close on the Midway Mansion in spite of murdering Eric, or because she murdered Eric? That she was getting cash flow that would, enable her to proceed with this deal and get what she thinks she's going to get out of it. I don't know, because it was right at the same time, but I definitely think that that's probably part of the picture. They go through the same thing, trying to show the attempted murder stuff and the buying of the drugs around that time and Eric's messages. I have to admit, I'm not quite as strongly convinced with this one. I mean, I do think, well, it does show that she was getting drugs. He was sick. Could it have been an attempt? Maybe. But I'm giving it away that I do feel a little bit like it might just be too weak to say for sure that it wasn't an allergic reaction. The only thing we do know is she did buy drugs right before that time, but February 11th, and then it happened February 14th. I can see why they're making a connection with it, but I'm not sure that I think that it's strong enough to find guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for that one. And then Kouri's statements after Eric's death that are still telling Josh that I think I want you to be my husband one day, which is about 3 to 4 weeks after Eric died that she said that to Josh. So she did still have this idea in mind of continuing life with Josh now that Eric was dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the defense, when they get up, because the state is like Kouri was hiding her face, and so she was trying to hide her reaction or her
lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly. And they show these statues and these pictures of women grieving where they're kneeling on the floor and they're covering their faces. And look, this is the same position that Kouri was in. This is a grieving woman. They say there's 2 different ways to look at the situation. Kouri sitting on the floor. Is she hiding or is she grieving? And I mean, it was kind of similar to the art piece that they showed at the beginning. They're showing these art pieces to associate Kouri with this imagery of grief.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The witch or the widow kind of thing.
And they're like, look how sad. She's like the mother of Jesus. And she's in the same position like Mary was. I mean, I can understand why they chose that imagery to associate Kouri with something that's righteous and holy and pure.
Yeah, but you know what they did, though? They showed portrayals of grief.
Right.
Instead of photos of people actually grieving.
True.
Which you can also say, oh, this is what grief is supposed to look like.
Right.
Maybe she can't fake cry or whatever. So it's like, okay, well, this also works. So, you know, there's that too. Like, it would be more compelling if it's like, well, look at all these other people who no one has any suspicion of who reacted in the same way. Instead
they're
of
all guilty too.
Right. Well, instead of look at these statues of somebody depicting grief,
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. They are saying, well, look, her friend Allie, she said that Kouri seemed distraught when she came to her house after Eric's death, and nothing about her behavior struck her as being unusual. And law enforcement, they did 10 searches of the house trying to prove that Kouri killed Eric, and the last search was only a few weeks ago. And Clint said nobody was ever in that house without him, but we see video that the PI was there when he wasn't being observed, and he could have been doing all sorts of stuff. You never know. And you can't believe Clint's testimony because he said this, but we can show that it's not that. You can't listen to Josh or what he said about the whole have you ever killed anybody, because the first thing that the PI told Josh was Kouri killed Eric. So, of course, he's looking at everything through that lens. So his comments...
That's not well, I mean, yes, but he contacted them because he saw that she was arrested. So
true.
The same effect is still there, that he's looking back on things in that lens, which we talked about.
Well, and I think really the main thing that you could say was being processed through that lens is that one conversation, because all the rest of the stuff that they put into evidence are the texts between them. And that's not about whether he was thinking she's guilty or not guilty. Those are just what were happening and the conversations that occurred. The only thing that isn't maybe influenced by being told that she did do it, 100% she is guilty, is his recollection of this one conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is not being seen through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
Just that conversation is being seen through that lens. Right?
Right.
And they found this walk the dog letter. They didn't follow up on numerous leads. Hey, Carmen says that she bought 15 to 30 pills every time. So where are these 30 to 120 pills in Eric's stomach?
Right. I mean,
and like, O'Driscoll, he's just excusing himself for the lack of information that, I can't remember everything from the investigation, or I didn't do all of it myself. I was kind of the one who was overseeing and assigning out things, but I don't recall all of the details of the investigation. He said he could find the information if we gave him a minute. We are in trial. He was not prepared. So the defense attorney, I was not ever impressed with her cross-examination. I thought she was clunky. this was not the main defense attorney, Miss Nestor.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the other ones who I didn't think was that good at, like, the judge had to keep explaining to her, yeah, no, you can't do that. Oh, you need to do it this way. But I thought she was a good arguer when it came to presenting the closing argument. She was passionate. She was able to really evoke, I think, emotion from the jury. This, like, well, of course Kouri deleted stuff. She was having an affair and she bought some drugs. Kouri searches. It makes sense she's doing those searches based on the information that she's getting from the autopsy, and she knows she's being investigated. She's scared. I'm saying that Eric had an allergic reaction from the drugs on February 14th. Well, then he should have had an allergic reaction on March the 3rd, too. So that proves that it wasn't an allergic reaction from taking opioids because he didn't have an allergic reaction this time. The state is saying that the drugs were in the drink, but he had minimal alcohol in his stomach and none in his blood. They never tested the hair follicles that could have looked for confirming facts that he wasn't taking drugs, right? Carmen, they didn't even talk about Carmen in their closing argument. They didn't even bring her up. They said, oh, well, because she didn't really remember all that well. She really only testified to what she was told and what she was shown, not what she remembered. And Carmen said she was afraid of fentanyl. She never dealt in fentanyl. That's not lining up with what she's saying now. And the state's entire house of cards is being held up by Carmen Lauber. I think it was being held up by Carmen Lauber, but I don't think it's as significant once you brought in the forensic accounting and once you brought in Josh Grossman. Then it's a piece of it, of where she got the drugs, of her prevarication with hiding data and stuff like that. But now we have all these other pieces that show too. So they say, well, we're going right back to the walk the dog strategy. What might be the best way to get illicit fentanyl back from Mexico? Maybe in an old pain pill bottle? So maybe Eric took that pill bottle with him. He got illicit drugs and he put them in that bottle and he brought them home. Naltrexone, he wasn't taking that for Lyme disease. It was for alcohol addiction. He wasn't taking it. It wasn't in his system, which I just am like, yeah, she said he had stopped taking it. He was doing better and he was weaning off of it. And his Lyme disease diagnosis had been a year or more prior. So he would have been, tapering down on his treatment. So it really is kind of bagging on Eric. Like, they're kind of shifting all of the blame to Eric. This one I thought was a weak, proof that she wasn't motivated by Josh Grossman. She never did get together with Josh Grossman. So that proves that wasn't the motivation. I'm like, just because you have this idea of how things are going to go in your mind and it doesn't work out that way doesn't mean you didn't intend for it to work out that way.
Right. We already talked about that, that, reality is different than what you imagine sometimes. And there were complications also. Maybe they would have ended up together if there wasn't all this baggage.
Right. And if it had been ruled a simple, a death or an accidental overdose or a suicide or
and if it wouldn't have looked bad for her to get with him and...
Yeah, and this argument, okay, so Kouri wasn't a very good accountant. She was bad with money. She was a mom of 3 kids. She was really busy. So, of course, she wasn't focusing on her accounting. I'm like...
She was. She was focusing on it a lot. I mean, she was actively seeking out loans left and right. A large portion of her thought and time was on it. It just wasn't... She wasn't good at it. Yeah. But it wasn't like, oh, I forgot to pay my... I forgot to make my payment on this loan because I'm so busy being a mom.
Right.
No, she's scrambling.
Yeah.
She is...
That's true.
She is grasping at straws, trying to convince Chelsea to buy a house so that she can not actually sell it to her, but use the money, diverting the funds from the IRS. Yeah, this is all very active work that she's doing. None of it is, whoops, sorry, I ran the credit card too high. Silly me, went shopping.
Yeah, I mean, she also calls into question the accuracy of the forensic accountant's numbers, and like, she's good. She's a professional witness. She's good at testifying, but she's getting paid. She got paid over $200,000 to get up here and testify. Well, if you really look at stuff, it shows that Kouri made money on every single house that she sold. Like,
everybody gets paid to do a job. It doesn't mean that you're fudging everything. Like, you know, some people, it's their job to do their investigative research. She's going to get paid no matter what her research finds.
So is this defense attorney working for free, I wonder?
Right, exactly.
So how much are you getting paid to sit here and make this argument today? So can I believe you because you're making X amount of money for being here today?
They can wash their hands of it this time because they didn't call any expert witnesses. So we didn't pay anybody to testify for us.
Yeah, we're just paying you to testify for Kouri.
Right, and we're close because we're lawyer and client.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say that witness is sitting here in the courtroom today during closing arguments behind the prosecution. So
I just feel like some of these are like blanket arguments that every defense makes every time. Yeah. You can't trust their witnesses, their expert witnesses, rather, because they're getting paid to testify for the state. Also, like, over-reliance on reasonable doubt. If you have any questions at all, maybe that's reasonable doubt. Yeah, like, those two things are the things that we see all the time.
Why didn't you search right away? You could have just gotten consent from them and done a search. And
right.
Always bringing this up.
It's like copy-paste, change the names.
Totally. Yep, I agree. She closes up with, they say Kouri's the only one in the home that could have given Eric the fentanyl. Well, who else was there?
The children.
Eric. No, the children. No, what other adult was there? Eric.
Right,
so there's not only one person that could have given the fentanyl. He could have also given the fentanyl, is their argument. And the state says that Kouri bought illicit drugs, and it doesn't even matter if it was fentanyl. The defense says it doesn't matter. If she thought she bought something else, then she's not guilty. I don't really see how that, like, if it wasn't fentanyl she bought, if she thought she was buying something else, then you can't make her guilty for giving him the pain pills that killed him. I'm like, that's kind of admitting that, I don't know. I mean, that's just a weird argument to me.
If what she thought it was, which was what oxy is what they would say, right? Mm-hmm. Is what she had wanted, maybe, or what she'd asked for before, that amount of oxy would be lethal anyway, so...
I would think so. With as much as was in his system of the fentanyl, I would think that it probably would have been a lot of pills. But
that is an assumption. But
yeah, I don't know that for sure.
But I don't know. Anybody.
I was going to give him a lot of oxycodone. I wasn't trying to kill him, though. I just wanted to give him a lot of it.
Yeah.
and oops, it was fentanyl, and then he died. And I wasn't trying to do that, though. I just wanted him to be really, really sleepy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. But she is like, this is her constitutional right. You guys stand up. The state is trying to do this to her, and they're bulldozing her, and they haven't met the burden of guilt. You need to stand up between the state and Kouri, and you say, no way, we're not doing this. We will not find Kouri Richins guilty. I mean, she's like pounding it home.
Wow.
Like, this is subverting a miscarriage of justice by finding her innocent and saying, well, if you're the only one in there that believes it, you need to keep fighting and you need to stand up for and protect her, which is true. If that, for anyone, if you really believe that the evidence doesn't show proof beyond a reasonable doubt, then yeah, you should stand up and say, no, I don't think that this reaches the burden, right? But the state, they get up and give a little rebuttal, and the prosecutor's like, you notice how the defense does a lot of talking, but they didn't really reference much evidence or testimony at all from the trial. They're using a lot of rhetoric. They're trying to toy with your emotions. If you take out all of the rhetoric from their statement, what you're left with is really not much, you know. He does admit that the state's case is mostly circumstantial evidence, you know, and he's like, well, I mean, most cases are circumstantial evidence because people don't videotape themselves killing their spouse.
Right.
So we're not going to have that. We didn't choose Carmen Lauber. Kouri chose Carmen Lauber. Kouri had that connection. She's the one that went to her to ask her for this stuff. She also knew she had leverage with Carmen because Carmen needed stuff from her. She needed work from her. She needed letters for community service that Kouri wrote for her that were actually false. They say if you only believe the testimony of Carmen Laubers that is corroborated by other facts and evidence, right, then that's still enough evidence to convict. Which I see their point, and they're saying, yeah, look at the things that Robert Crozier said that corroborates Carmen's testimony. All of the things that matter, they match up between the two of them, according to the state. Crozier was at the gas station 3 times. Carmen was there every single time, and she was never there again. Why is it that she asks Carmen to get drugs after Eric's death? Well, Carmen has already asked her, hey, tell me that he didn't die from those pills. And she says, no, he died from an aneurysm. And a few days later, she reaches out to Carmen to ask her to get some more pills. She also says in that text message thread, I need something to get my mind. And that's all she says. Like, I need something to take my mind off of things, an escape or something.
Which then goes against the defense saying, well, the only reason that she was even getting drugs from Carmen was because he wanted her to. Well, now he's not there to have the drugs. So in this instance, she's getting the drugs for herself.
Right. The state is like, oh, she realized, ooh, gosh, Carmen's thinking about these drugs that I got, and maybe I better get some more drugs to show that it wasn't linked at all to anything to do with Eric. But then, like you said, now she is saying it has to do with Eric. You know, but then there's this time afterwards, why, like I talked about the reaction of Kouri versus the reaction of Katie and the difference in the feeling of Katie's reaction versus Kouri's reaction. And they play little clips of that. And he brings up that she's hiding her face to hide her non-reaction. And the only time she does pull her hands away from her face and do the like Home Alone squish face is when the officer tells her that Eric's body is being sent for autopsy. And she gets this wide-eyed look, and she actually looks from behind her hands, and the prosecution claims, well, she thought she was going to get away with it. I don't know. I mean, they say the empty pill bottle, it doesn't matter because he didn't have that in his system. And we found that baggie later of all the pills that could have come out of that pill bottle. And so it doesn't actually, like, why would he need other drugs if he had those drugs? Like, he's got a whole baggie full of drugs. Like, why isn't he using those instead? It doesn't make sense that he's still trying to search out more drugs. So the final thing that they bring up is the walk the dog, and they translate it into maybe what's going on in Kouri's mind, perhaps, as she's writing this. Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie. He would probably have to testify to this, but it's super short, not a lot to it. And they say this translates to, if Ronnie will testify to this, it will explain everything and I won't get convicted, which I agree. He'll need to tell Sky at the meeting next week. Ronnie will need to talk to my lawyer. The story needs to come from him, not me. Right? Never mind, I was arrested 4 months ago. So why isn't somebody coming forward and saying this a lot sooner than this?
Right.
Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico. Hey, we got to explain the fentanyl. Never mind that Eric would have had to fly with the fentanyl. And Kouri has said Eric wouldn't fly with drugs for fear of getting caught. He made Kouri fly with the drugs. And then this, Ronnie never told me about the conversation. Never mind me knowing this story, despite the fact that Ronnie never told me.
Right.
Eric never wanted anyone to know he had an issue, especially get caught. He always wanted Kouri to go down for him. Had to explain why everyone claimed Eric never used drugs. Well, he did use drugs. He just didn't want anyone to know. But if Kouri knew, then Kouri should have been honest about it when asked directly when he's not breathing on the floor. Reword this however he needs to make the point. Just include it all. it can be short and to the point, but it has to be done. So the state says that all of the evidence in the case proves that Kouri murdered her husband and father of her 3 children. There's no other rational explanation for the evidence. Despite all of the evidence, Kouri doubled down and blamed Eric. See through her facade, check her ambition, do not let her get away with murder. I felt like they both gave strong closing arguments as far as the way that they presented.
Mm-hmm.
I did think that the state's laying out of all of the evidence was really effective. They had a really good PowerPoint that showed everything to remind them of who was talking and what they were saying and how it all fit together. I think their arguments ended up being stronger, though the defense, I think she did a really good job and she was very passionate. But honestly, I feel like the fact that she's using all the walk the dog details, that actually hurt their case for me, because I felt like they were using Kouri's playbook of the things that she wrote down there, and it did seem like this was the story that Kouri concocted in order to prove or show how it wasn't her and she had nothing to do with it, and this is what explains everything away. And I do find that kind of concerning. So my verdict, I think I have to go with guilty for aggravated murder, the first charge. I think not guilty for the attempted aggravated murder, even though it's possible or maybe even probable. I don't think it crosses the line for me of being like, oh, a sure thing.
Like, without reasonable doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why they believed it and why they presented that case. I just don't think it's quite strong enough for me. The forgery, yes, she did it. I think was this a scheme to get that money and then the claim making it a scheme? I don't know.
I mean, what would it benefit her to take out the life insurance policy?
I mean, it was a month before, so.
And not use it. There'd be no benefit to her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if she forged his signature, it's a month before he dies. She claims it pretty quickly. Yeah, I mean, I guess then I have to go guilty on everything except for the attempted murder. So that's where I land. Where did the jury land? Well, if you know us well, you can predict what is coming that we totally underestimated yet again. And I don't know, I should just stop saying it. I should just stop saying what we're going to do for sure, because unless we've recorded the whole series ahead of time, then the reality is we really don't know.
Yeah, it's the last Kouri Richins episode before the actual last one.
This is Christie's last episode. And then Maryn will do her last episode.
Well, if you'd believe it, she thought that she was gonna get last episode and this episode in one episode last time.
I definitely underestimate how much conversation we're gonna have about things. And you know, there was a review on Apple Podcasts or something that this listener, I don't know if you're listening this time, but that she was saying she found our podcast because she was looking for information about the Colin Griffith trial. She wanted to understand that better. She wants a deep dive. Well,
place?
Yes, this is the right place. And she said this was the place to get it. So if you're a deep diver, then maybe this is the podcast for you. And I'm glad that she felt like, oh, good, I got what I was looking for. You went into the nitty gritty and you told me all the stuff, and it makes much more sense to me as a result. So
yes.
Yeah. So that's really what we want. At the end of my episodes, verbose as I am, we hope that you get a sense for the jury experience and maybe why I see the story the way that I do. Because, you know, admittedly, this is only the story that's presented in trial. And there's a bigger story out there, I'm sure. You know, there always is more of a story out there. So, you know, if you know that some of the things that I've said don't quite line up or there's more to the story, well, that just goes to show you that the jurors don't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you so much for hanging out with us and listening to my long-winded explanations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, again, and we say this every time, but if you're still here, then we know you like it anyway, so that's great. And you will want to stick around for next time. I wasn't sure what I was going to find because I didn't really do any research until yesterday. When I was like, okay, I have my episode tomorrow and I need to partially...
She should have said, my mom's never going to get through all of this information.
Partially intentionally, because I didn't want anything of what I was saying to be influenced by outside knowledge.
Right.
Now, that won't always be the case with every trial that we do. There will be some that I already know more things, and I will just have to be more careful about what I say.
Right.
But now I know things, and yeah, I found some interesting things to share. So I'm excited. I don't know. Yeah, that one in particular I think is really interesting.
Okay.
The rest of it are more just like, okay, but I don't know that they would change things.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and you have a whole nother week that you can see if there's even more stuff that you didn't know about.
True.
And you can add that to your list.
Yes.
So,
okay, well, we'll see you next time for the last episode. I'm pretty confident in myself that this I might
talk a lot. You never know.
Yes. Well, it's not that there isn't enough interesting information. It's just that I'm not as confident in myself as talking out all the talking points.
Well, I'm excited. Until next time, I'm Christy.
I'm Maryn.
And you've been listening to Hung.